Isaiah, we're just doing a quick, kind of what you do if you're a student, what you're interested in, something like that.
Yeah. I'm a student. I'm in high school. But about me on social media, I think mainly to keep up with my friends, to be honest. I'm not someone who, does a lot of sort of work on it. But I am working a lot on how media affects politics, and especially on how disinformation has led to like important shifts in like political media in general.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's super important. I think Avalon, if I'm not mistaken, you were also kind of hovering around something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just this past summer, I've been doing some work in AI bias and exploring the different ways that artificial intelligence and like internet algorithms have like real world impact. And Isaiah, when you were just talking about kind of politics and media, when I was introducing myself, I spoke a little bit how like my first experiences in media in a real kind of involved way was using social media to activate young people to get involved with political issues. So I think that's a really interesting topic. We should definitely continue to, hit on during this.
Yeah, and also how it's like both, led to, obviously the spread of disinformation, but also, new ways of campaigning and reaching out to voters and, creating mass movements.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Emily.
Yeah, I'm Emily. I'm a high school student, and I use media mostly for entertainment. And I also use it to kind of learn new things. I'm interested in computer science, so I use it to like follow tutorials and learn more about like coding and things like that.
Awesome, thank you. And then Sophie and Callan. Callan, I see you have your video up, so I guess you win the deal on that.
I'm Callan. I'm a sophomore, and I'm going to be a junior in high school. And I run a TikTok account that primarily focuses on content related to like film, TV, gaming, stuff like that. And how I use media, I use it kind of just like as like kind of like a social life to like create a community around people that share the same interests as me. And it's just been really helpful in getting to know other people that, share my interests for, like cinema and stuff like that. And it's been really cool to interact with people from around the world that love the same things as me. So that's how I use media.
Awesome, thank you. And then Sophie, if you're there.
Yeah,
cool.
Sorry, I kind of have a sinus infection, so I might be a little nasally. So I am going into my junior year of college. I go to the University of Pittsburgh, and I'm a media studies major and a political science minor. So obviously I am very interested in politics and political media. I consume political media every day as part of assignments for school and just out of general interest. But personally, like obviously I also use social media for personal enjoyment, entertainment, in my spare time. I don't know if I personally post a lot, but I definitely consume a lot of media and social media. But I haven't like started any like kind of accounts or whatever that I'm in charge of. But yeah.
Awesome. You guys all, it's so interesting. This is such a great mix of people from different perspectives and interests. And I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So I think maybe we can transition, if that's cool with you, Murray. Now that we kind of have a better sense of where we're all at. I'd love to hear, like, if we could just literally popcorn it. Like, what are the media platforms that you use the most? Like the social media apps, or even like YouTube, Reddit, like where are you viewing content, and where are you making content, and kind of which ones have been, I guess this goes along with it, but which ones have been like your preferred platforms to use to, I guess we can start off with find information and have entertainment. Yeah, Zach, go ahead, definitely.
TikTok a lot. That's where I spend a lot of time. I watch a lot of content on there. Sometimes I post, not as much though. Like just silly videos, like with the filters and stuff, and with Ben, just for fun. I do see a lot of different stuff. I see like entertainment. I do see politics stuff sometimes. It's not something like I'm really interested in. So I see a lot of different things. And also YouTube. I watch that for like learning a lot.
Yeah, I think YouTube, I don't know, I think I heard somewhere that like YouTube's like, I think among, I think the most of all of the time people are on it, I think the most of all the social networks is because of how much content there is, and also because of, there's definitely more variety in terms of lengths in YouTube against, something like TikTok or Instagram Reels. So yeah, that's definitely where I spend most of my media time for sure.
I definitely use TikTok the most. I don't think you really can compare it, considering that's like where I have the account that I run on there. But if I'm trying to learn information or see something that is like unbiased, I mean, there's bias everywhere, but I usually go to YouTube for that because TikTok has a lot of just very clearly opinionated posts. So if I'm trying to learn something new, I'll usually go to YouTube, but TikTok is where I'm on the most.
Yeah, I threw it in the chat real quick, but I mostly lurk on like Reddit, and I used to post a fair amount to Instagram, but at this point I feel like if I have a moment, I'm just watching other people's stories like kind of mindlessly. But I also, that is discrediting TikTok. I have spent a lot of time on TikTok, and during the pandemic, it was just like, oh, everyone's now getting into this. And then as I got into teaching, it became like, okay, I need to research what the kids are doing in my room because they're finding crazy information and they're finding crazy behaviors to mimic from TikTok for devious licks. That was, yeah, no, it was a problem. It was a problem across the whole country. And it's just culture at this point. The kids remember that. So, and on some scale, it's mostly preservation at this point.
Yeah, I think what you just said, Callan, actually, and like I saw a few other people nodding along about how TikTok, because people are putting forward a lot of personal content, like TikTok has really given, at least in my opinion, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think, has given a lot of agency to individuals to have a really big, quickly growing platform for like the first time, because I guess you can do that on Instagram, but with Instagram, it takes a lot more effort than on TikTok, just because of the way the algorithm is designed. And so people can very quickly put an opinion out there. It can be an opinion that's based on absolutely nothing than the way that the wind is blowing for them in that particular moment of time. And it can be amplified. And so definitely, like, I think that's an interesting part of as media has been expanding and changing. And now that more people have more of a platform, it's giving rein to maybe like more democracy in terms of what the opinions are that we're hearing, the perspectives we're hearing, but also can kind of be problematic because not everything is being fact checked. So I'm curious to hear, like, because it seems like everyone kind of said that they know TikTok or use TikTok. Has there been a time where you've been on TikTok and you've seen something that has changed your perspective on something in a big way? Because I know I have. But I'd love to hear from any of you, like, has there been anything that you've seen on there that's changed your mind on something or alarmed you in some way that like has stuck with you?
There definitely has been on numerous occasions. Why I like the app most of the time is because I can just see things that I would never normally see on any other social media. Like I might be scrolling and I might see some video about some issue in like Morocco or something, or just somewhere like across the world where like I would have never even thought that something like that had occurred. So it's a very good app for spreading awareness. And like you said earlier, how like any person can just post something and they can get like a whole audience. I've definitely had times where I've just seen someone talking about some issue or something that's going on where I've been like, wow, like I never thought about that. So yeah.
I agree. I think the app is very like unique in a sense where you can kind of like express your own opinion. And I've seen like a contrasting view to like my own, and I felt more like I learned something new just like watching like a TikTok.
I just think that this is a very interesting idea, especially because last night I actually went to a friend's concert and talking about the way that, people can just kind of gain a random following, but it's not crowds of people are coming to meet you. She had one or two people that follow her on TikTok show up to her concert. And they're like, "Oh my God, like I love your content." Like usually this is something that's reserved for someone who's blown up a bit more. And so it makes me, part of what has also made me think in a different way is that, you know, it's wonderful that artists and innovators, like her, for instance, are able to get that following and able to start to get that interaction. But then, looking at the dark side of the coin a little bit, there's also issues like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate has become unfortunately, a force on TikTok. And for better or worse, that kind of what we talk about in, having different opinions and things like that. There's also a lot of confirmation bias that ends up coming. And I think the algorithm is definitely a huge issue in that sense.
Obviously, well, I'm not on TikTok. I'm not really familiar with like Andrew Tate specific TikToks. I mean, I know obviously he's terrible, but on Instagram, I have seen some of my friends post on their stories, like, Andrew Tate needs to like stop saying what he's saying. So, I mean, social media both can, the algorithm can just present these harmful posts, but also, allows people to come out and like show how they're opposed to it.
I think I kind of view TikTok as like a double-edged sword, because while you can be exposed to some like, really like important issues, or like it's like a fundraiser or something important, you can also be exposed to someone like Andrew Tate very quickly. And, when they get like a big following, the algorithm will only keep on like recommending people to see these videos. So like, that's why I don't really, trust the app too much, because you never really know what they're going to throw at you. And I think like the best example, like you said, was like Andrew Tate. So you never really know with the app.
Absolutely. I just wanted to jump in really quickly because this conversation around like the harm of media and the rise of like prominent figures on media, like Andrew Tate, if there wasn't social media, would just be, not to be so blunt, but just kind of another random guy with bad and harmful thoughts and ideas. And he would probably be able to spread those thoughts and ideas to his immediate circle of people. Maybe he would be able to build up, like a following of a few thousand people that agree with him, like a spread of an ideology. But because he has this platform, he can become this celebrity and have millions of people seeing his content that wouldn't otherwise see it. And that kind of just reminded me, actually, when the war in Ukraine broke out a few months ago, I remember seeing, and I don't know if you guys have seen anything like this, but I remember there would be people that would go on live on TikTok, and they would be showing a video of like them in some kind of shelter with the sound of sirens going and fundraising on TikTok. And then it came out that so many of these lives had the same video playing and the same sound playing. And these were people that were pretending that they were in a war zone in order to capitalize off of that. And so I think also like that kind of speaks to a theme that we're discussing here, which is like social media is a great tool for entertainment and like new perspectives, but also like how do we counter the bad things that happen on there without restricting people's creative freedom? But I think Sophie was going to jump in right before I said something, so I wanted to just give some space, Sophie, if you wanted to contribute.
I was just gonna say, because of the whole Andrew Tate thing, I was actually with a friend of mine last night, and he was complaining to me about how he was just like banned off of Instagram and everything. And I was really like annoyed with him and disappointed in him that like I'm friends with this person who was like upset about it and was like, saying that he likes Andrew Tate. And I was like, why would you like him? Like, do you hear like the things he says about like women and all this stuff? And he goes, no, like you don't know what you're talking about. Like he's actually like, if you listen to what he's like actually saying, he's like just a really smart guy, and he teaches you how to like work hard and tells you like there's no excuses, and if you work hard enough, and he like motivates you, and he's super successful. And I had to hear about the Bugatti again, which is so annoying. And I was like, no, but have you heard like his comments like on women and like the video of him like abusing a woman? And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. All I've seen is videos of him like on his podcast trying to motivate people and give people advice on how to motivate themselves and make money and be successful. And then I showed him like the stuff that I've seen like on my TikTok feed about him saying horrible misogynistic things. And he was like, well, I've never seen that before. And that's because he is a finance major from Duke who cares about all of the motivating and making money stuff. So that's all that shows up on his TikTok, and all he's seen of Andrew Tate. He didn't see any of the stuff about him being a really horrible abuser and all of that. And he's like, well, I didn't know any of that because I've never seen any of that. I've only seen him talking about his Bugatti and how successful he is. So it is really interesting how the algorithm, like it's just the same guy, but we've had two completely different things that we had seen of him and completely different opinions on him because of what came up on our For You page. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it made me think of like what you were saying about how the algorithm points people in different directions. I read like I did a lot of reading, especially after the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, about the online radicalization of hateful people and the alt-right and like the neo-Nazi movement in the United States. And it made me like start to think like in our generation, I'm gonna like safely assume everyone here knows what a meme is. But in our generation, like I remember when I was like 11 or 12, like a meme would literally just be like a random stock photo of a dog doing something funny and then like some ridiculous caption that essentially was meaningless, and like we would think that that was hilarious. And then now in the past few years there's been like some memes that are like dog whistles, which means they're like coded but they have a deeper meaning when you see them. So to the average person, they don't mean anything, but to a person who is in certain like corners of the internet, they're like white supremacy, they represent white supremacy, or they represent misogyny, or they have some kind of deeper meaning. And so these like very innocent, what used to be very innocent things like memes, now all of a sudden have turned into like another tool for radicalizing people and getting people to continue to spin hate. So it's just interesting how like sometimes like we think that our corner of the internet is the corner of the internet that everyone is on. Like I have this conversation like all the time with my boyfriend where I'll be on my TikTok For You page and I'll be like, oh, did you see this? And he's like, no. And he's like, I think our For You pages are so different. And I look at his For You page, which is like the discovery page of TikTok, and it's completely different content than mine. But I would never know that if he didn't show me. So I think it kind of like, I'm curious because I'm sure all of our content looks different too. Like I'm sure all of us, like regardless of what you're on, if you're on Reddit, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, you're on Facebook, like the stuff that each of us are seeing on a daily basis is probably, some of it might be the same, but some of it is probably super, super different. And so Murray, do you have anything like maybe something that has been some question that's been inspired by this conversation that maybe we could take this in a unique, different direction?
Well, yeah, because I was thinking of when you mentioned the live streams that were faking being in a Ukrainian war zone. That's definitely not just an internet specific thing, because I was trying to find, if my screen flashes white, I'm like trying to Google something really quick. But there's a news story of, it was either in New Zealand or it was in, some country tried to do a gun buyback, and they actually had to stop and like reevaluate their reasons and like what is a gun, because people were basically bringing a piece of wood with metal strapped to it that could technically fire a projectile, and then the government was forced to pay them money. So people were making profit, and this actually just happened in one of the states in the US. I did find this article where someone had printed 3D guns so they could make profit and in the gun buyback. So this isn't just, one thing of the internet makes it easier. It's more just a fact of how do you quell the selfish need to take advantage and to, make that profit versus like understanding your place and understanding how things are kind of meant to be supporting a larger image. It's the one for the many kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads me into another question, which is like, for each of you guys, what are your like standards for yourself when you're using media? Like, do you have any boundaries that you draw? Like, I know for me, I make sure that like I'm not on social media for very long during the day, but also like I run a TikTok account that has a good following, and sometimes I'll get like random hate comments. And for me, like where I draw my boundary is some like people might keep those comments up. I don't, because I feel like it's my space. Like even though it's a public profile, it's my page you're commenting on. So I delete hateful comments. I also like don't follow pages where I know the photos are going to be like really seriously edited, because I know that also like as a woman growing up in the age of social media, or even just like as a member of our generation, like with a developing brain in the age of social media, seeing highly edited images can make me have a distorted perception of other people, myself, may like bring about some bad feelings. So I have like some boundaries that I draw with my social media use, but I'm curious, like, what are your boundaries, and like, what's your like philosophy for approaching like social media specifically?
I mean, I guess my rules are, to be honest, on Instagram and Snapchat, at least the only people I'm following are, my friends or, really famous celebrities who, I know aren't like shitty con artists or like misogynists. And like if they, if it does happen, I'm obviously gonna unfollow them instantly. Yeah, honestly, I mean, partly also I don't post that much, so I don't really get too many hateful comments.
How I view it is I kind of try to remain like as positive as possible. Like on the side of TikTok where I'm at, like with the whole like movie cinema stuff like that, there's a lot of really toxic people on that side. And I'm kind of known in like the mini community that I have, like as like just like a positive guy. And regardless of like your political affiliation, like I'll still be friends with you as long as you're not like a terrible human being like Andrew Tate. Like I recently made a video saying like, if you support Andrew Tate, like feel free to block or unfollow me, because I draw the line at, not being a good human being. I don't really see politics like on the community where I'm at, because I will still respect you. I just kind of distance myself away from like negative energy or negative people. And the same thing with what Avalon said, I don't really care what you call me. Like if you're going to straight up hate on my page, I don't want that energy there at all. So a lot of the times I'll delete or block you. So yeah, in summary, I just try to remain as positive as possible. So yeah.
I'm sorry to jump in, but I feel like that's like really huge, because we're seeing more and more the way that you interact with the space and the energy you bring does have a cascading effect. It really is a rock being dropped into a pond and creating that ripple. But it's difficult because on one hand, it's like everything is true, and on the other, it's nothing is true. There's no way to, you hear a random video that has some type of cool history fact, but then if you do research yourself, they're like, actually, that's a conspiracy. And it's like, okay, well then what's a conspiracy, right? And then it becomes this cascading issue of like, even moving away, because by the way, I also really support for you, Avalon, like, yeah, hateful comments on your space, that is for you. You get that out of there. But for things like news agencies or for larger figures to be removing, YouTube removing the dislike button, they didn't remove it. They removed showing the number of dislikes is insane, because once again, all right, so wood burning on TikTok, people got very into this new art trend of you take an electrical thing. You put in wood and it makes cool little streaks, cool little electrical art. But it also stops your heart if you brush up against it anywhere. And there's been a bunch of like, what is the rule? What is the place for TikTok to say like, actually, this is a dangerous thing. Like you should not do this, or YouTube or any of these things, because I'm sure the dislike ratios on those videos are very high, but you can't see them anymore.
Yeah, I would like to add on to the point I think Calvin said back that the media it is like a double-edged sword, because like in one way they can bring awareness to like mental health issues and make like uplift people, but like in another way they can also like glorify like eating disorders or things that are like negative. And I've seen like people saying that they like are in love with like murderers or stuff like that, and I just find that kind of weird.
Yeah, that's a definitely, I know exactly what you're talking about, Emily. Well, sometimes there will be this like trend that'll pop up on TikTok. And like there's also like, I don't know how much you guys know about true crime. Like there's been this rise of like true crime enthusiasts, and people will start like podcasts, they'll start TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or even like I know there's like Reddit channels where they will talk about like the very, I'm not gonna like go too deep into it, but they'll talk about like really graphic and violent things. And it's content that's made where they like will edit it and splice it together with like scary music and like sound effects, and to tell this like gruesome story about like a real person's life. And it's on one hand, people are kind of just like, well, it's entertainment, like it's creativity, it's artistic expression. It's, art was never meant to like comfort people. Like this is, something that people are into. But at the same time, like this kind of touches on something I was saying earlier, like, where do you draw the line of telling people like not to do things on social media? Like, do you draw the line when they're spreading false information, when they're encouraging violence? Like, I know TikTok and like YouTube, I think, and Instagram, like they all have these like algorithmic functions where people can report a video, and if it's something that's like violent or dangerous or is deemed hateful, like sometimes they'll remove it. Not always, but sometimes they'll remove it. But like some things are just maybe things we don't agree with and we don't think are moral and like ethical, but they're not like, there's no overt harm being done in the video. So it's a little complicated. And it's definitely like, I know a lot of people who are scholars in free speech and freedom of expression. Like social media, the rise of social media has caused a really kind of difficult moment, because media up until very recently was either in print or it was through art, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Or I mean, there's been radio for a while, but like media as we know it now, because I'm sure like, maybe not to assume, actually, maybe I'll just pose the question, like when you guys hear the word media, what do you think of? Like, what are the first three things that you think of, let's say, when you hear the word media?
Everything on the internet, like social media and information, news, and yeah.
I'd say probably like movies, TV. That's definitely a category. I think news, and then obviously social media, which is itself a whole world of content.
Yeah, I guess that ages me, because I just think like news, TV, and movies, but it's also an overwhelming question because everything, just like you said, Evelyn, it all falls into media at some point.
I think if I could say three words, like the most broad words to describe media in general, I would just say news, knowledge, and entertainment. If you could fit everything into three words, that's how I would do it.
I like entertainment as that all-encompassing. That's a good one.
I feel like in my like media classes, it kind of ends up separating itself into like film and TV, social media, and then like print media almost, because a lot, maybe not so much in my generation, but print media obviously has a very long history And social media is very new. And while there's a lot to explore with social media, we have to learn the history of media, and most of it is print media. So I took a whole class on just print media and the history of print media and how print media developed into radio and then TV and then social media. So I think of print media as like a really big one.
Sophie, I just wanted to ask you, like, as an aside, because you are studying media in school, like, what led you to the decision to be a media studies major? Like, what got you there? Because that's super interesting and really relevant to our conversation. And you have a perspective on this that I don't think like any other ones of us have on just media as a topic.
Right. So I've always been, I think it has a lot to do with like my family and my parents, because they've always encouraged me to like educate myself and be very like politically vocal, which is definitely not something that I can say about a lot of my friends. So I've always had a like interest in like the news, and I've always been like very into pop culture as well. And my family is also very into sports. So I've kind of always been someone who consumed a lot of media. My dad, for work, he has like a consulting like firm. He like helps companies like increase their revenue. So he does like a lot on social media and all that. So I always found it very interesting, and especially growing up now, and consuming all this media, I really felt like it was something I wanted to study, because eventually I feel like I want to work in some kind of political media, whether that be at a print outlet or at like a television news outlet, as like a researcher or writer or something. It's just always something I've been really, really interested in. And I think especially now, it's just such an important field, and it's growing and changing so much that I feel like I feel like I would be valuable to the industry, honestly, because I just feel like there's so many people who don't know what they're talking about, who are like getting into this field. So I wanted to major in it and really study it and learn it and try and be someone who's like valuable, and just someone who can help navigate like the craziness and try and really understand like misinformation, disinformation, and try and combat it, I guess. I just think it's a really important field right now. It's just something I've always found really interesting.
I absolutely could not agree more. And one thing I actually want to ask the whole group is, how do you bridge that gap, right? How do you create that connection? Because I don't know if you would agree, Sophie, but I've experienced that when there's certain groups of people you try to talk to, it's just a different reality, right? There's a very different set of facts, there's a very different set of views, but there also isn't the willingness to even remotely be open to a new perspective. It's like, nope, you know what? I understand you now. I have belittled you. You are underneath me. Like, I don't need your opinion.
I think a lot of it, I like, especially my friends from high school, um, I knew it wasn't like necessarily like normal for a kid or like a girl in high school to like care so much about politics and be like so invested, and like I literally could not wait to turn 18 to vote. Like it was like I was so, that's why everyone was like excited to turn 17 and get their license or whatever. I was like, I don't care, like my mom can drive me around. I was so excited to actually vote. And like every time it's election year, like I do all of my research on all the candidates. It doesn't matter. And I had to convince a lot of my friends to register to vote at all. And they don't realize that like there's not just an election every 4 years for president. And I'm like, you do research on all the local levels too, because that's where change is really, behind the scenes. But there's a lot of change that goes on a local level, a state level. Like it's not just on the federal election level. And they just didn't even seem, it's so accessible now online. You could go and you could search your representative's name and you could find all of their like campaign funding history, where they stand on all these issues, and it's so accessible, and kids don't do it because they're not interested, which I find really sad. And I just remember like one of my best friends, I was in AP Gov my senior year of high school, and she like could not be less interested in the class. I don't know why she was taking it. And every 5 seconds she would tap me on the shoulder and she would ask me like silly. She asked me one day if Donald Trump was a Republican, and I was like, are you like serious? Like, it's just like, it's so accessible, but people like don't seem to, I think it's definitely improved with social media. Like more people care and more people learn more things. But I think there's a lot of work to be done in getting people to care. They think it's like not interesting for some reason. And I think a lot of what social media is doing is helping people realize that like these representatives, what they're doing and all of the like lawmakers are doing behind closed doors affects them now. So I think a lot of that is changing with social media. I don't really know if that answers your question.
I wanted to actually, like, based on what you were just saying, Sophie, I wanted to pose a question to the members of this group here that are under the age of 18. Like, what percentage of the political knowledge that you have right now, what percentage of it did you get from social media?
90% or more. The other would be from family, probably, but like most of it I've learned from media.
Oh, probably opposite, like maybe 1%, maybe like 0.5%, not like barely any. Like I'm trying to think of like the last time I learned something about politics and social media, and I guess like the one example I could think of was this Pennsylvania Senate candidate mocking the other Pennsylvania Senate candidate over this very dumb video of crudités. Yeah, no, I don't. Like, I definitely follow politics on social media, but like my current understanding, most of it's come from, reading the news. So yeah, but I mean, obviously I'm not like most of my generation in that regard.
I would probably say pre-AP Gov class that I took, I'd probably say all of it. I probably got all of my political information off of social media, and not all of it was good too. Like occasionally I'd see something helpful, but then other times, I'd see like one of those forgot his name, but like a Vermont senator was like, he screamed or something at some rally and like ruined his entire campaign. And another,
the Dean scream.
Yeah. And then this other political figure who got his campaign was shut down for how he ate a sandwich. So like really stupid stuff I saw on social media related to politics, some good, but that was like all I knew. But then I took my AP Gov class and I was like, okay, now I know.
What's interesting about because both those examples, those are from like 2004. And the other example with the sandwich, that was based Carrie trying to order a Philly cheesesteak with Swiss on it. I don't know. It's kind of interesting that like both these examples have kind of recirculated on social media. People have remembered them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of the like political content that you see on social media, it's not very formal. A lot of it is very like targeted, like very, very personal. It seems like, with all this stuff with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, like people making fun of their like appearances or how they talk or something. I don't know. It's just, I kind of wish that it exists on social media, but to like mass audiences, I feel like it would be more beneficial if it was more formal, because a lot of people, based on like how they vote in elections, they'll just vote for the guy who seems, or the gal who seems more like who they'd want to like have a beer with or like have a conversation with, rather than how they actually are like as a politician. So I don't know if it answers the question, but I kind of wish social media was more formal in regards to politics.
For me, I did mostly get all my information about politics from social media. I also have to be like mindful and do like my own research to make sure everything is like non-biased and stuff. And I come from like a community where like mostly people complain about like politics and don't really do like any action. So I took it upon myself. Like I got my ID and I got registered to vote. So I'm like ready for like next year.
That is so exciting. I'm so happy to hear that you're registered to vote. It was so, I was like, when Sophie said that she like couldn't wait to vote, I was in like the same boat. It's kind of, I feel like when I like was talking to my parents when I had like turned 18, I was like, one of the biggest reasons I'm excited to turn 18 is because I'm going to get to vote. So yeah, voting's super important. And I also think, Callum, like to your point about like the lack of formality in a lot of social media political like information, like I don't know if you guys have heard this term. Again, this might just be something that that's on my side of the internet, but like there's this term that's been coined called like girl bossification, which is essentially like making someone into like, instead of actually looking at the person, they're kind of basically just being admired for either like being seen as like powerful or like a girl boss, or like they're just like cute and funny and sassy. Like this term is used for both men and women and people of all genders. But what's interesting is that like, I think what you were just saying, Callan, about like the lack of formality is like, I will see like thirst trap TikToks or Instagrams made of politicians where they're like trying to portray the politician as like physically attractive. And then the politician will just like, or the candidate will just have like some of the worst political opinions that I've ever heard. But all of a sudden they'll get like what we call on social media, like the hype for having these like edits made of them being like attractive. And it's like really weird because then people will just like blindly follow what they see, because our generation has like also been told to trust what we see on social media, and like we often don't believe that another person would intentionally mislead us. Like that's something that definitely like I've struggled with a little bit on social media, is like understanding that people oftentimes like they know what they're doing when they do something harmful on social media, and like not all, you know, misinformation on social media is intentional, but disinformation, like intentional misinformation, absolutely is something that happens. So it's just like the whole landscape of it has been really interesting. And I think, Isaiah, what you were saying about finding most of your information from reading the news, I would be really curious, like if we sat down, had a long conversation about it, how your perspectives on politics are different than someone who's exactly your age, from exactly where you live, and has like a very similar background to you, who gets all of their information from social media, and how that affects also your long-term political opinions, because I can imagine that it would.
You know, I guess, you know, when I hear my sister who does get a lot of information on politics from social media, it's that like sometimes they do actually see the information, but like a lot of the time they don't, you know, see the underlying processes that sort of make it happen. And like I haven't taken AP Gov, but I assume that'll be where that sort of class like gets you to, oh, this is how it all works. This is how it all fits together. Because social media, it's just all these discrete memes just coming at you. And, you know, they don't expect you to have the framework to understand it.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. And I kind of wanted to segue us, and unless anyone had anything they wanted to add real quick, but I had a question, but I'll give it a second if anyone had anything else they wanted to contribute. Okay, so I had this question. This question has actually been on my mind since we got on the call. But I'm curious, like, out of everyone on this call, how many of you have read like the full privacy policies of the social media platforms that you are on? Like when you agree to those, when you have that little message that says like agree to terms, like how many of you are actually like reading the privacy policies and like seeing what's being done with your data on every time you sign up for a social media platform? Like how many of you have done that? I know I haven't. Like, it's not a great thing, but I definitely know I haven't. So I'm curious to hear, like, is that the same for your?
I don't know, I mean, they write them to be boring. They write them to, be like, oh, well, why would I need to read this? Like, I guess if they made it, easier to read, then you'd understand what data you're taking away. But I'm also like, you're online, you should expect to have, like kind of when you walk outside, there's obviously going to be some, stuff taken away. And especially when you're getting all this information for free, there are definitely trade-offs.
I've occasionally when there's like user updates or privacy updates, like I'll look up like what the updates entail. And I read like bits and pieces of like TikTok's like their whole privacy, whatever the guidelines, right? But like I'm not a psychopath, so I didn't read the entire thing like a crazy person. But it's definitely a bit shocking the stuff that companies can hide in there. Like a lot of stuff like there was this whole time on TikTok where your private drafts could get uploaded without you even knowing. And it was like, like nobody knew that was going to happen because nobody read the guidelines, which is, I think companies should expect that. They should make them more engaging. But it's kind of creepy how some companies can hide stuff, in their long text.
So I want to further this by getting everyone's opinion, or not everyone, if you want to share. But there's a quote that I heard a little bit ago, and I think about it so often because I'll answer it straight up. I do not read those privacy policies, right? You start reading it, it says, oh, for this, go to section C, you go to section C, it says check 124.4. And like, it's exactly like Isaiah said, it's made to be impossible. And so the quote, it's actually from Google's former design ethicist, and he went on to co-found the Center for Humane Technology. His name's Tristan Harris, and he said, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. So I'm just curious to hear, how do we feel about that idea that if you're not paying, someone is profiting somewhere, right?
Yeah. Like you're getting free content, you're getting media, so they're probably gonna like take some information from you. And also going back to like the terms and conditions thing, I got like 5 emails in the past week about like updating stuff, and I deleted them all. I didn't like read them. And I saw this like TikTok account where like this guy, he basically, as a job, I guess, he just reads all of them and just like post content, like simplifying them so you kind of like understand what the terms and conditions actually mean.
That's where I get a lot of the information about that stuff. I know the exact guy you're talking. Yeah. And with the whole thing about you are the product, that's completely true. I mean, like I've been using TikTok since like November of 2018. And it's 2022 now. So my For You page is very personalized. So they, I criticize social media a lot, but thanks, Alan. I criticize social media a lot, but like I still wouldn't delete my TikTok account, even though they know me better than most people in my life. But when you think about it, it is scary. And if all of the social media apps that are free, you're going to get advertisements. And I've noticed that over the years, I've gotten advertisements that are very personalized to me. Like with my whole movie, gaming, cinema account that I have, I've gotten ads for like movie rental services. And because I'm a video editor, I've gotten ads for editing services and like packs that you can download for different effects for editing. And it's like where did they get that information from? So you can definitely tell, I can definitely tell that I am a product, but still not deleting TikTok.
I think that's definitely interesting because I feel like maybe this is a generalization, but I feel like even if you presented, maybe this would be an interesting experiment, like actually simplifying like privacy terms and doing an experiment with 1,000 students between the ages of, let's say, 13 and 17, and showing them exactly what's happening with their data, and then seeing how many of them would feel compelled after knowing all of it to delete their social media accounts. And I feel like that's definitely a challenge because social media is such a big part of our generation. And it's such a big part of, like, for at least a lot of us, not for all of us, but for a good amount of people in our age group, because we're like the fastest growing age group on pretty much all social media platforms. Like, I can't imagine at this point a world without social media. When I worked at the United States Senate for a month in high school. And while I was there as part of the program, I couldn't have my phone. And like, to the point where even if I had my phone, we couldn't have Wi-Fi. So it was pointless regardless. And so I was off social media for a month, and I recognized that when I came home, I felt just a lot better because I wasn't getting overstimulated with so much information all of the time. But definitely, like, there were a lot of things that happened while I was gone on social media. Maybe like certain trends popped up, or there were certain issues that were being talked about, or someone posted something that like represented some change in culture. Like, I get a lot of my information about pop culture from social media. Like, that's all where I get my information from about pop culture. And like, especially if you're like in a field where you rely, let's say like you're a business and you're relying on social media for your advertising, like you can't, there's some businesses that don't even have like real like brick and mortar stores. They're just completely run out of like a warehouse and social media platforms. So it's hard to imagine, like, we always talk about like the harms of social media, and like we've been having a deep conversation about it, but like, what is there to do? Like, I'm wondering, like, if any of you, and might be a super broad question because I don't think any one person can have the answer, but like, what would be a solution for like remediating the harm that social media causes? Like, in your opinion, what would be a good solution, or just one step to fix the harm that social media has caused when it's caused harm?
Maybe how the algorithm works with like how they direct information, and like being able to see multiple things from different, like, multiple perspectives, I think. And I know this isn't social media, but people being more open-minded and like understanding other perspectives would help, probably. That's all I have.
You know, it's a difficult question, because I feel like it kind of is like, it's a human issue. I feel like more than like a social media issue. I feel like people need to just change their attitude in general, just with like any problem or any issue. People need to be more open-minded. I feel, like how Zach said, there needs to be a change in the algorithm. Definitely more. I feel like there needs to be, even though I would miss it, seeing videos that I know are like directed for me, like less personalized and more broad, more important videos that you see. I feel like, I know the people that work for TikTok are very smart. If they created a mixture between personalized and general videos, that everybody could see, I don't think it would. I don't think it would solve a major, issue, but it could definitely help, if people were to open their minds and stop with the attitude, and we could all see the same videos that are saying the same information. I don't know. I think it's more of a human issue, but the algorithm could play a part.
So I'm about to go on like a little bit of like synthesizing a lot, but Emily, I think I saw you on mute, so I want to let this happen first. Yeah.
Okay. I think there should be like some regulations, especially since now people are using social media like for like a job, and they get like most of their source of income like having a business in social media, and also people that kind of exploit things like their children for content and other things. It should be like more regulated, so things like that like don't happen.
I feel a very important thing that every social media company needs to do is, take a really deep dive at all the people that create content, not invade anyone's privacy, but there's a lot of people, and accounts that will like openly say like coded messages for like, there have been criminal organizations that have been found through TikTok, or like, terrible, horrible things. And like Emily said, there's also people who exploit their children for money. Like,
I've seen TikTok lives where there will be parents, showing their like disabled child or something to try to get money off of viewers. And, like once again, there's legit like criminal activity that can be spotted. Like if you take a couple seconds, and every social media platform is guilty of this. There needs to be a deeper dive without violating people's privacy, but maybe even like giving specific people jobs for it. Because even I've like caught like suspicious things going on. So if a 16-year-old dude can do that, these $1 billion company can hire people to check these people out.
I definitely think that there's an operator error happening. In doing education and in working with kids, I've actually noticed a significant lack of internet literacy and the ability to even navigate computers the way that this group is able to. If the news is not providing us, and however we receive it, either through Reddit or through broadcasts, how do we reform a type of way, or this is just total think tank out of the blue, but how do we reform something that is able to give more substance, to give more of an open perspective, to allow people to have a discussion in ways that honestly we're pretty gridlocked right now?
I mean, do social media companies really want that? People getting pissed at each other is, that just equals more clicks and more ad sales. Yeah, it's not gonna happen without government action.
I think what you just said, Isaiah, just quickly, because I know other people probably have opinions on this, but I just want to touch on what you said about like, do social media companies really don't want, like, do they really like not want people to fight? And it's funny because it reminds me, I follow this TikTok account that helps educate people on how to grow their following on TikTok. And one of the videos that like blew up was like the quickest way to like boost your following or like boost a video's views is post something controversial that people are not going to agree on, or have a spelling error somewhere in the text of your videos. And like at first glance, when you think of it, you're like, oh, that's kind of innocent. Like, I guess you're just being a conversation starter. But like real stuff, like there are real consequences for things that happen on social media. Like I think some of it is like, as they say on TikTok, I'm not sure if you guys know the phrase touch grass. Like sometimes when something's getting out of hand on the internet, people will be like, you need to go outside and touch grass and remember that you're in the real world. But some stuff has real consequences, and like cancel culture is like, we can argue all day about whether or not cancel culture is a real thing, but like people have like very, very real consequences when something controversial happens on social media, either completely warranted consequences or for something ridiculously stupid. So I think it's like just really interesting what you're saying about like, would social media companies, like, what would they do if they didn't like rely on people not, if they didn't rely on people fighting and they didn't rely on kind of a little bit of chaos? So it's interesting to think about it, because like, I don't know if I would want to go, I don't even know if it would be as entertaining for me if I didn't go on social media and I didn't see all the weird, crazy stuff that I see on there. Like maybe that's part of the draw. But anyways, that's kind of a separate tangent. So we'll go back to the initial question that Murray had posed.
I honestly think, like, I'm trying to think of with the point that Isaiah brought up, like, will the companies really want to change their ways? Like, they're not. That's why, like, earlier I said, like, it's like a human issue. Like, are they going to change their ways, or like, does there need to be government regulation? Because they profit off of that stuff. It's like, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but it's true. Everybody likes to see a little bit of chaos on social media. I'm guilty of it. Like with what Avalon said, posting something controversial. In my whole cinema thing, I will post some like hot take about some movie that I think is terrible, and I will, I'll get thousands of views off that, and people will be, calling me stupid, and I get interaction. So like, I wouldn't stop, and the companies wouldn't want to stop either. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution would be. It'd have to be like something with a government regulation or something.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. Like, I see like a thread or like comments of people arguing, and I just read it and like have fun. I don't know why. And yeah, it's just entertaining to see people like arguing about like a stupid topic.
This has been an amazing, really cool conversation. It's really awesome to meet all of you. And, you know, it gives me a good image of like what this can look like moving forward, because we are the group that is taking over, right? You know, and yes, if you have links, Callan, awesome. I was actually going to ask you for yours. I want to see your cinema TikToks. But you know, this is a really awesome example of like the group that, you know, we want to create, have these discussions, you know, figure out how we can bring that literacy to a larger scale. And kids these days, excuse me, I'm 24, I'm just gonna name that, I'm not that old. But they really just get on TikTok and they just scroll and they just see what they see, and there's zero research behind it. You know, they're very happy with what is given to them and they just take it as fact, which I wouldn't blame them. I would do the same if I were a 7th grader with this amount of information at my fingertips.
I just wanted to say it was great talking with y'all and getting to learn about your various experiences with social media and how it like differed from my own and like to compare.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It was so wonderful hearing from you guys. And I think the fact that like we've all had these various thoughts and opinions, and sometimes like as young people, it can feel like, I remember, especially like when I was in high school, like it can feel a little intimidating or strange to also like talk about some of these things with your peers. But I also really encourage you, like if you have friends or a close friend or a close loved one who you can like talk to about these things, it's so helpful to like have conversations like these to help you think through things and process things and come up with ideas. And I'm also really hopeful that like more conversations like this will be hosted, because I think these are just like so constructive. I've learned so much from all of you, and it was lovely meeting everyone.
Yeah, I agree as well. It's really like important to have like these open conversations. Like as a student, I had the luxury that my teachers were really like open. They allowed me and my peers to kind of like talk about these issues. And it's nice that we're bringing it into like this circle.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. See you.